"Who are you to speak on my child? His condition? How he looks? How he sounds? You don't know him, and you don't know God," she said, her voice sharp with conviction. Ever since Christine made the choice to keep her son off social media, something began to stir in the minds of those who had been watching from a distance, not out of gossip but genuine concern. The updates stopped, the milestones didn't come, and slowly, a quiet unease replaced the hopeful silence. While some dismissed the lack of visible progress as normal, others couldn't ignore the signs. Then, a live video surfaced on X, and a doctor who saw it echoed what many had begun to fear but were reluctant to admit. The developmental delays were real, and the truth could no longer be brushed aside. Without targeted and timely intervention, there's a real chance Christine's son may never find his voice, literally. That sobering possibility hung in the air like a storm cloud, but the tension only deepened when Blueface's mother jumped into the fray. Wasting no time, she pointed fingers at Christine, implying that her parenting, or lack thereof, was the root of her grandson's developmental delays. Her accusations didn't just stir the pot, they sent the entire situation into a tailspin, turning a private struggle into a public spectacle. When Christine first welcomed her baby into the public eye, she did it with unfiltered joy, streaming his birth live on Instagram and calling him flawless in every way. But as time passed, that picture of perfection began to feel more like a protective illusion. Quiet murmurs turned into louder questions as viewers noticed things that didn't sit right. His head remained unnaturally still, his eyes didn't follow movement, and his cry, harsh, almost animalistic, sounded nothing like the soft wail of a newborn. Despite the growing concern, Christine stood firm, brushing off doubts and assuring everyone that her son was perfectly fine. But then came a live stream that shifted the tone completely. While passionately defending her tattoo of Blueface, her son's relentless, high-pitched screams echoed in the background. The moment was raw and unsettling, cutting through the screen like static. For many watching, it confirmed what they had feared all along. Something wasn't adding up. It wasn't just a single unsettling moment. It was beginning to look like a pattern. Then came another video that added to the growing unease. Christine was feeding her 8-month-old son, holding a spoon close to his face. But instead of the eager reaction most babies show, reaching out, smiling, showing interest, there was nothing. No spark, no movement, no curiosity. He only seemed to register the spoon when it was nearly touching his lips. For most infants, mealtime is a lively interaction. For him, it passed like background noise. The footage struck a nerve online. Concerned followers flooded the comments, some drawing a connection between the child's development and Christine's documented substance use during pregnancy. One comment, sharp and direct, echoed the sentiment many were starting to share. Chrisean Rock is in denial. Junior isn't hitting his milestones. He can't even hold up his head. He doesn't smile. He doesn't coo. Comments like, these began pouring in, but Christine wasn't having it. She fired back, brushing off the concerns as baseless hate, convinced it was just online trolls looking for a reaction. To her, it was noise. But for many watching, it didn't feel like cruelty. It felt like concern laced with sadness. A growing chorus of voices worried that something vital was being missed, and that the cost of denial could fall on an innocent child. As the public conversation expanded, the narrative began to shift. Some started suggesting that this might not be about Christine's choices during pregnancy after all. Maybe the root of the issue wasn't substance-related, but something genetic, something no amount of preparation or prevention could have stopped. A different kind of empathy emerged, one rooted not in blame, but in the hope for understanding and help. Some pushed back hard, claiming that the developmental milestones everyone kept referencing were nothing more than arbitrary markers, tools, designed to boost parental pride rather than measure a child's real growth. But that argument quickly crumbles under scrutiny. Sure, watching your child reach a milestone can feel rewarding, even emotional. But it's not about bragging rights. It's about being informed. These benchmarks are practical guides, created to help caregivers recognize when something might be off, so they can act early and effectively. Parenting isn't guesswork. It's a constant balancing act between intuition and information. Meanwhile, doctors weighing in online painted a far grimmer picture. After analyzing publicly shared images and videos, some medical professionals began pointing to distinct physical indicators consistent with fetal alcohol syndrome, suggesting that what many feared might not just be speculation, but a diagnosable reality. The conversation around Chrisean Rock and her son has grown louder, not out of cruelty, but out of concern that refuses to be ignored. Early on, when she introduced her baby to the world with an Instagram live birth, she called him perfect. But as time unfolded, viewers began noticing troubling signs. His head remained still, his hands didn't follow motion, and his cry, sharp and piercing, echoed more like an animal's wail than a baby's comfort-seeking sob. When a video surfaced of her feeding her 8-month-old, his lack of interest in the spoon, no reaching, no excitement, stood out. For most infants, food sparks engagement. For him, it barely registered. These moments piled up, and people began connecting the dots. Small telltale features, narrow eyes with epicanthal folds, a flattened midface, large ears, and a notably small head, resembled the physical signs of fetal alcohol syndrome. Some even noted a cat-like cry, speculating about conditions like Cri-du-chat syndrome or possible neonatal withdrawal symptoms. Then, in family photos, something else. A white reflection in his pupils, possibly hinting at vision problems. Through it all, Chrisean remained defiant. She told critics to stop diagnosing her child from behind screens, insisting she'd already taken him to real doctors. "He's healthy, bro," she said, brushing off what others saw as red flags with casual dismissal. Yet for many, their concern didn't feel like boundary crossing. It felt like urgency, like a collective call for someone to truly see this child. Chrisean had always been open, broadcasting every little moment, from early morning cuddles to late-night bottle feedings, allowing followers to witness her becoming a mother in real time. But as the months passed, the silence around medical updates and missed developmental milestones grew deafening. There were no checkup videos, no footage of Junior babbling, crawling, or pointing, just gaps that spoke louder than the curated moments. When Blueface entered the fray, he didn't soften the blow. Despite his own shortcomings as a father, he publicly accused Chrisean of neglect, specifically delaying a necessary hernia surgery for their son. He claimed the postponement had nothing to do with medical advice and everything to do with her priorities. After his public shaming, she quickly followed through, proudly sharing Junior's recovery as if to redirect the narrative. But by then, trust had already begun to erode. As Junior approached his first birthday, Chrisean uploaded a video of him attempting to walk, an apparent effort to prove he was developing normally. But it backfired. At nearly a year old, he still wasn't walking independently. There were no signs of verbal engagement, no baby talk, no gestures, no interactive response to his surroundings. Instead of reassurance, the video intensified concern. Some began to voice what had long been whispered. Maybe this child wasn't brought into the world out of readiness or love, but as a way to hold on to a failing relationship. The issue was no longer just about developmental delays. It became a question of intent, of emotional maturity, of whether Chrisean truly understood the gravity of motherhood. Raising a child, especially one who may need extra care, requires more than public affection and occasional posts. It demands consistency, patience, and a willingness to confront hard truths. To many, Chrisean seemed more committed to the aesthetic of motherhood than the responsibility of it. Even her former friend Jiden weighed in, saying, "You can't help someone who doesn't see the problem," capturing the frustration of those watching helplessly from the sidelines. Eventually, Chrisean began retreating from the spotlight, sharing less about her son, a decision most agreed was overdue. But that privacy didn't last. When she brought Junior to church for the premiere of her new song Yahweh, it wasn't what people saw, but what they didn't see. That struck a chord. At nearly 2 years old, Junior showed no curiosity, no typical toddler behavior. He sat silently, disengaged. It wasn't his possible disability that upset viewers. It was the sense that he was a casualty of chaos, of two people so wrapped in their own drama that they never paused to prepare for parenthood. The pregnancy had been turbulent from the start, marred by threats to terminate it and substance use that continued despite warnings. And now, there seemed to be little accountability for how those choices might have affected the child. Public frustration grew not only with Chrisean's response, or lack thereof, but with Blueface's mother, Clarissa, who had always been vocal in her disdain. Though her critiques often sounded harsh, there were moments when the heartbreak broke through. Through tears, she once admitted that seeing her grandson for the first time devastated her. What began as internet drama has evolved into something heavier, a very real, very human situation involving a child who may need more care, more attention, and more protection than he's currently receiving. This is no longer about celebrity spectacle. It's about a child's future, and whether anyone close to him is ready to rise to that responsibility. I couldn't even tell if he was looking at me, or through me, Clarissa admitted, her voice breaking. It crushed my heart. Her honesty, unfiltered and aching, cut through the noise that has surrounded this story from the beginning. Beneath the headlines, beneath the drama, there's a child, just a little boy, caught in the middle of a life he didn't choose. Clarissa, despite her complicated relationship with Chrisean, made it clear she loves all her grandchildren, no matter what challenges they face. But loving them doesn't erase the pain of watching one struggle, especially when part of that struggle might have been avoided. In stark contrast, Chrisean continues to project a carefree persona, smiling for cameras, partying, drinking, pretending. None of it carries consequences, but the cracks are starting to show. The public isn't demanding perfection. They're just hoping for authenticity, a mother willing to face hard truths, own her mistakes, and put her child first. Because this was never about internet beef or proving haters wrong. It's about a child who deserves more than being a footnote in someone else's chaos. Now, even those who once defended Chrisean are beginning to acknowledge the painful reality. The signs are too loud to ignore: the distant look, the unfamiliar cry, the lack of speech or emotional response. People aren't being cruel by noticing, just human. They're worried, and rightly so. Because what's unfolding doesn't look like a child simply developing at their own pace. It looks like a child possibly living with the consequences of decisions made before he ever took his first breath. And those aren't just assumptions, they're supported by visible, undeniable evidence. Multiple clips, some aired by the Zeus network itself, show Chrisean smoking while pregnant, laughing casually on camera as if unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the weight of what that choice could mean. These videos weren't taken in, secret, or fabricated by critics. They were public, raw, and unfiltered, and now they serve as receipts in a conversation that's grown increasingly difficult to ignore. These aren't whispers passed in comment sections or baseless gossip meant to smear her name. They're facts, captured in real time, now resurfacing as people try to understand what may be contributing to her child's delayed development. So, when people begin to speak out about potential developmental concerns, they aren't doing so from a place of hatred or malice. It's coming from a place of rising concern, from viewers who followed her journey closely and are alarmed by what they're not seeing. Chrisean's son is approaching 20 months, an age where most toddlers are not only walking, but also forming words, pointing, laughing responsively, and engaging with their environment in clear, emotional ways. By now, many children are able to communicate needs, wave goodbye, mimic adult behaviors, and show social awareness. But by multiple accounts and from publicly shared videos, Chrisean's son has exhibited very limited communication. No babbling, no attempts at speech, no clear signs of social interaction, and still no independent walking. This isn't simply a slow start or a case of every child moves at their own pace. While it's true that children develop differently, there are well-established developmental benchmarks for a reason. They're not designed to shame parents, but to serve as tools for early detection. When those milestones aren't met, it doesn't mean a child is doomed. It means there's an opportunity to intervene early and provide the support they may need. Ignoring those signs, or worse, dismissing them as internet hate, does a disservice not only to the child, but to the millions of parents who rely on early warning signs to advocate for their kids' health and future. What's most heartbreaking is the growing sense that these red flags are being overlooked or downplayed. And the more Chrisean remains silent or evasive, especially after once being so open about every detail of motherhood, the more that silence reads as confirmation. Her retreat from transparency has not inspired trust. It has sparked deeper concern. People aren't asking for a perfect mother. They're asking for one who can acknowledge reality, take accountability, and seek help if needed. This situation is no longer just about Chrisean's choices. It's about a child who may be struggling in ways he can't voice. And if those cries, those quiet stares, and those missed milestones continue to go unanswered, the consequences could stretch far beyond social media. Because what's at stake isn't image, it's a child's future. What makes it harder still is the silence. Chrisean, once so eager to share every moment of motherhood online, now avoids the topic entirely. And many believe that deep down, she knows. She knows something's wrong. She knows the comments sting because they hit close to a truth she hasn't been ready to face. Instead of confronting it, she shields herself with vague affirmations, leaning heavily on faith and surface-level positivity. And while faith can be powerful, it can't replace the responsibility of action. Hope without follow-through is dangerous, especially when a child's future is at stake. Hoping things will fix themselves, without seeking answers or support, isn't brave, it's a gamble. And it's a child, not a timeline or aesthetic, who may pay the price. Still, we can't forget that Chrisean is young. She's navigating motherhood, in the harshest possible spotlight, where every mistake is magnified and every vulnerability exposed. We don't know everything she's battling behind closed doors. Postpartum depression, fear, isolation, shame. It's possible she's overwhelmed, paralyzed by the weight of what's unfolding. And no, that doesn't excuse inaction, but it does call for compassion alongside accountability. Motherhood isn't meant to be a performance. It's a lifelong promise. And if there's one truth this situation makes painfully clear, it's this. A child doesn't need a perfect mom. He needs a present one. One who is willing to listen, to learn, and to lead with love, especially when it's hardest.